last few minutes constitute taking roll. Christy?
Could we hold off just a couple minutes for Casey and Kathy to get into the right room?
Okay.
They'll join as soon as they get to the room. No? Chair Morton?
Testing 1, 2, Fargo. Can you hear us? Can any other sites hear us?
This is Fargo. We can hear you.
Christy, they can hear us.
Chair Morton? We can go ahead and do roll call. There should be a quorum and then
Please
Kathy.
do.
Okay. Board Chair Morton?
Here?
Mr. Steeman?
Here.
Ms. Nesset? Dr. Melliker?
Here.
Mr. Daly?
Here.
Dr. Ryan? Mr. Ness?
Here.
Mr. Hacker?
Here.
Mr. Wakeford?
Here.
Dr. Pruce?
Say that again.
Here.
Thank you.
Now you can start.
Christy, can we get started then?
Yes.
Before we do start, let me just take just a minute. We've had some exciting things happen all year, and I just want to take time to recognize North Dakota State University and their national championship in football. Well done.
Thank you.
Number 6. Brock Spinoza, a 17th century Dutch philosopher, probably didn't know much about college football, but he did know about excellence. He has a great quote: "All things excellent are as difficult as they are rare." Congratulations, NDSU. Congratulations, Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Okay, call to order. That's been taken. Do we have some action items, Christy? Or do we go to board business?
Don, this is Nick Vaughn. Chrissy just had to step away, and you need to approve the meeting minutes. And, well, first you need to approve the agenda. The agenda can be approved without a vote, so long as there's no additions.
Are there any additions to the agenda? Can we have
Kevin
a
Miller,
motion
I
to
move
approve?
Kevin Miller, I move approval.
This is Greg, second.
Chair Morton, this is Andy.
Yes.
The state staff senate update at the end will not be Retha Mattern from Bismarck State. It'll be Cole Kruger, and he'll be in Minot. So just one minor change to the agenda at the end.
Thank you, Andy. Any other further discussion? Call the vote, please.
Dr. Meliker,
Yes.
Mr. Hacker,
Yes.
Mr. Daly,
Yes.
Ms. Nesset, Mr. Steeman,
Yes.
Dr. Ryan, Mr. Ness,
Yes.
Board Chair Morton,
Yes. Meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Motion to approve as sent out. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Daly,
Yes.
Mr. Ness,
Yes.
Dr. Ryan, Mr. Hacker,
Yes.
Dr. Meliker,
Yes.
Ms. Nesset, Mr. Steeman,
Yes.
Board Chair Morton,
Yes. Christy, am I correct in assuming that UND has not joined us yet?
they will be here shortly.
Item number 4 is a first reading. Should we proceed?
Don, we have item 3.
I don't have anything down for item 3.
Oh, okay. It's the Valley City search. We've got to give them the go-ahead and pick a board member for that. So I'm not sure why it's not showing up. But item 3 is Valley City presidential search.
Oh, I'm sorry. I printed a copy of the agenda and I didn't get that. Okay.
Odd.
Go ahead, Chancellor.
This is,
Okay,
this is
thank you,
Kevin
sir.
Milliker. I would move approval and recommend that Greg Steeman be our board representative.
Is there a second?
Do they need both motions?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Ness,
Yes.
Ms. Nesset, Mr. Steeman,
Yes.
Dr. Meliker,
Yes.
Mr. Hacker,
Yes.
Dr. Ryan, Mr. Daly,
Yes.
Board Chair Morton,
Yes. Congratulations, Greg.
Thank you.
Moving on to item
And
number 4.
Mr. Morton, could I just thank Greg? Am I allowed to thank Greg?
Yes.
Yeah, for people who haven't gone through these searches, it is a lot of work. I just want to thank him volunteering. He's also going on our foundation trip to Silicon Valley, potentially to raise a nice grant from a lead technology company, taking several days out of his week. And again, just thank you again. We'll hopefully make it really smooth for you. But thank you for volunteering.
Certainly.
Thank you, Greg. Item number 4, the first reading. Richard, are you going to handle this?
Chair Morton, yes, I can. I'd like to request that we delay on this item a few minutes till UND has joined us. The revisions we made were initiated at the start of then Chair Nesset, and I know that Member Ryan also had some concerns about this policy, so I think if we delay it until they come online, we'd be better served.
Should we move on to Chancellor reports, or should we wait for that too?
Don, my reports are just informational. There's no action, and I'm glad to call Dr. Ryan and Ms. Nesset directly afterward.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, yes, sir. Well, first off, there's lots and lots of stuff going on. We just kept it just a few minimal, but I want to thank Member Hacker for working on a new initiative on emerging technology with the governor's office and the bank. More for that in February. I want to thank Minot. Hosted an incredible event for the governor's State of the State. Huge logistics issue, 1,000 people, standing room only, wonderfully done. So lots of incredibly good work being done, and for Darren, working with ITD on the digital initiative, real complex stuff going on. So I could have a long update, but I'm mindful we want to go fast, given we'll have the February meeting. So the key thing is to update you on the Mayville search. There was a shift there due to personal family reasons, hopefully short term. Dr. Buckles had to take a pass for a while, and we've appointed Dr. Phillipson to be the co-chair with Dr. Ryan. And we have over 40 applications. I think we're already seeing the benefits of privacy in this search, and Mayville's been very discreet, and they're the test case of how you keep this private and honor people's privacy. Also, Fred Strand has volunteered to add to the actual search committee. He's an incredibly successful educator, nationally recognized by the President Bush in the White House for the top math teacher in the entire country, and then he shifted to higher ed a few years ago. So, wonderful things going on with the search, and we will be updating you that things are on track for the schedule that was published. And also, what they've done at Mayville may very much help accelerate the Valley City search, because there's clearly identified, dozens of people interested in moving to North Dakota. On the governor's task force, I attended the whole meeting, but I will basically defer to Don if he wants to jump in there. But really thoughtful discussion. Don, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yes, the first meeting was all about level setting, brought in numerous outside speakers to update. We learned the history of legislation as it impacts higher ed. Larry Isaac talked about numerous systems around the country, what's working, what's not working. But it was just basically just a lot of presentations and a lot of information being shared with the task force, so that we all are operating from the same knowledge base. The next meeting is scheduled for it's after our board meeting in February, the 22nd. Our board meeting, I think, is on the 21st. So it will be a monthly meeting. The governor is definitely very engaged and is leading the process, which is good, he and his staff. So I think we got it's a good committee. It's got good diversity. It's got good, thoughtful people, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out. He did make it very clear that this is not a committee that's going to close campuses. He can't reiterate that enough. It's a governance. What is the best governance system to allow each of our campuses to innovate and to keep moving forward? Any questions on the task force, governor's task force on higher ed?
Okay. And one thing I'd like to add, Dawn, if I could, is I want to thank Vice Chancellor Dolan. The governor's office asked her to provide a brief, detailed brief, and she spent, considerable amount of time and has spent several hours there at task force. So I want to thank her again, taking the time out of her normal work for that. Okay, if I can proceed, Chair Morton, to item 7.
Yes, please do.
Okay, I just want to thank Vice Chancellor Wisecup, who's leading our Lumina grant effort with Dr. Mellick. I'll turn it over to them, but it was a wonderful, well-attended event. So, Phil, did you want to jump in, or Dr. Mellick?
Go ahead, Phil.
Thank you, Chair Morton and members. It was a well-attended event. 50 people on the 11th of January, and if you remember what the weather was like on the 11th of January, my hat's off to the presidents and the folks who did come to that. It was right here in this room. We had legislators, we had people from Commerce, from the tribal colleges, and the North Dakota Consensus Council is working on the final report on that event. It's a challenge, and we have a lot of work ahead of us, but it was a nice event, and thank you to Larry Scogan and BSC for helping us with that.
And I just want to add, I feel the same way, and thank you to Phil for putting this together on a short notice. And like he just mentioned, we had a wonderful turnout. We also came away with some ideas how we can improve our attainment in North Dakota. And I believe that the date was, Mark, is it 2025 that we want to achieve 65%?
That's right.
Something like
Correct.
that.
Yes, sir. If I could jump in, we also had the director of DPI, Ms. Baszler, and the head of CTE, Mr. Kutzer. So we had high-level people, the governor's office, and I can tell you I'm on the CTE board that is now doing the search for the new CTE director. I think Mr. Kutzer has been there since around 2000, so almost 17 years. And our board is so well positioned because issues that are now just coming up. How are we oriented for the future? What are the emerging challenges for leadership? You know, we've got several efforts, which I'll let Phil touch on here on the next one. But the fact that we had so many people show up on the winter day like that, including Mark Sanford, who the chair of the interim committee, spent almost the entire day. So thank you again, Dr. Meliker, for your incredible energy, being also the lead on the Lumina and the other things. With your permission, I'll go over to item 8, Senate Bill 2003. Again, Phil is leading that one. So Phil, why don't you go ahead and just jump in?
Not a lot to report now. The interim reports were provided before the holidays, and the task force chairs are working on these issues now. We schedule a monthly call with the consultants from South Dakota, and things are moving forward toward the deadlines.
Okay. And one last point, Chair Morton, members of the board, is we're mindful of these many different threads, Lumina grants, the Senate bill, and this all ties nicely into the Envision process. We had, I guess since our last meeting, we had a retreat with the presidents in December, brought together their feedback, and these threads are been winding together for updates, quite frankly, to each board member who's assigned to each of the pillars, but then summits by faculty and students, which again, I'd want to thank Vice Chancellor Weiskamp for helping facilitate that. Those are coming up. And then a May overview of the key items. There's some pretty substantive issues have come out. I mean, some things that the board will make some historic decisions if they decide to do that. You have the latitude to do some pretty big things if you want. And then wrap up most of it in June at the retreat, though we are mindful with a lot of the approaches to strategy now, like the design approach, that there's a continuous update. Some things just are not able to be established yet, and one of those, of course, would be the governance study by the governor that is not going to conclude, I think, till November. So thank you for everybody's work. That's all I have, subject to your questions.
Any questions of the Chancellor? Hearing none, can we, is UND on board yet?
Yes, we are, Chair Morton, Nesset and Casey Ryan and President Kennedy.
Good morning, welcome, good to have you.
We're glad to be here.
We're going to move back to item number 4, first reading, and I'm going to call on Richard to lead us through this.
Thank you, Chair Morton. This is the first reading of policy 916.1. As a reminder, this policy was put into place during the last legislative session when House Bill 1279 made a change to where individuals are allowed to store firearms on state property. That bill created a possibility for an individual to store a firearm or dangerous weapon in a building that is owned by the state, provided that the individual lives in that building, because the state board, of course, owns many buildings in which people live. There was a need to write a policy to deal with the repercussions of that law. We very quickly produced policy 916.1, which served the purpose, but as we introduced it, the request came from Chair Nesset to make some revisions to it and tighten it up a bit. Those revisions are now ready. It's taken a bit of time. The laws are complicated and the issues of building and land ownership are complicated, so we've taken a great deal of care to revising the policy in a way that achieves the goals of the board but does not have unintended consequences. With the revision of policy 916.1, the substantive changes are essentially two. The policy as it currently exists now allows presidents the latitude to give permission for an individual to store a firearm or deadly weapon within a state-owned residence. We've done a rewrite of the policy that does not allow an individual to give themselves permission, however. So to give you an example, with the new version of the policy, existing version of a policy, a president can give permission to him or herself to store a firearm in their state board-owned residence. In the new version of the policy, no one can give permission to themselves, so the president would have to go to another designated individual to gain permission to store a firearm in their state-owned residence. There is only one other designated individual, that's the chancellor, so the president would need to get permission from the chancellor to do that. The policy also makes it clear that giving permission cannot be delegated. The president cannot assign this duty to a vice president or anyone else. Likewise, the chancellor cannot assign this duty to a vice chancellor to ensure that we have very tight accountability on this issue. The other change to the policy is we've written language that prohibits anyone from giving permission to store a deadly weapon or a firearm in a building, a state-owned building that serves primarily as a residence for undergraduate or graduate students. So in other words, we've closed the door to the storage of firearms and deadly weapons in the dorms, as was the request from the board. To be clear on what this means, it means the presidents, while they have authority, they don't have authority over that. So if a student were to request to store a deadly weapon in a dorm room, the president's only answer could be no, that is not allowed by state policy. The language on that is concise but intricate. There are complications with mixed-use buildings and other things. The Academic Affairs Council, the Student Affairs Council, and Nick Vaughn worked diligently to navigate through all the iterations and possibilities, and we think we have a policy. I won't say that it has no unintended consequences, because such policies don't exist, but it has minimal and unintended consequences because of our level of diligence. This policy revision has been reviewed by the Academic Affairs Council, Students Affairs Council, and the President's Cabinet. It's also been to the various board committees. We'll note that at the Budget and Finance Committee, Member Ryan suggested additional language that would require the notification to be given to the chancellor anytime a president does invoke the policy and provide permission for possession of a firearm or dangerous weapon. We have, that language is not included in the version of policy 916.1 that you have in front of you. It could be added in if requested when this policy comes back for a second read.
There are questions of Richard. No, Birgit, you had a question.
Yeah, the faculty had a question whether one could provide a better definition of what constitutes a dangerous weapon. Firearm seems very specific, but dangerous weapon could be anything, and I think it said lethal weapon at some point too. So then what's the difference between a lethal weapon and a dangerous weapon? This is a language thing more so to be specific about what kind of weapons it would be.
Chair Morton, Member Pruis, we used the phrase dangerous weapon because there is actually a definition in state statute of what a dangerous weapon is. So we are, the laws are tied to that definition, so we have followed suit.
I didn't know that, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Any other questions of Richard on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
I have a question real quick. I guess just on the timing of things, is this like a one-time thing? Is this, extend the length of that person living in that residence, or is that something they have to do every so often? What's the timeline on something like this?
I think what the question is, Richard, once they get permission, do they have to get permission every academic year? Do they have to?
Chair Morton, the members of the committee board, the way it's written, I believe it is a one-time thing. If you get permission and you remain in that residence, the permission stands. That's not a topic that has appeared in other discussions. That's my puzzled look. I had to think about it for a moment.
Don't I have a follow-up on that?
Go ahead.
I have a follow-up on that. If a president gets a permission from the chancellor to have the weapon in the house, and the president resigns and there is a new president, is the permission with the president or with the house? Would the new president have to reapply?
I believe the way the policy is written, the permission goes to the individual, so the new president would have to apply.
Okay, thank you.
This is Kevin Melliker. Richard, I have a question on students, and being that North Dakota is such a large hunting state, is there a way that a student can store a firearm in, let's say, the security office or the campus police office or someplace like that? Or is there no exception to this rule, so they would have to keep that weapon, let's say, at home?
Chair Morton, Member Melliker, that issue has been discussed extensively in the councils. There's variation on that from campus to campus. For those campuses that have a police force, a recognized police force, that's an entity that is able to store a firearm or dangerous weapon for the students. And we do have some campuses where that is a service that is offered. For other institutions, state law prohibits, there are broad, fairly blanket prohibitions to where firearms can be on state property. So there's, without the presence of a law enforcement unit on the campus, it becomes legally complicated for an institution to offer such storage. I do note that North Dakota state law does allow individuals to store firearms in locked vehicles. So it's not impossible for a student during hunting season to be ready to go hunting first thing Saturday morning. There's flexibility within state law that we think that situation is tolerable for the students.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Do we have any comments from our presidents about how it's working on their campus? Any information you'd like to share with the group?
Chair Morton?
Chair Morton, I do have a
Yes.
question. This is Member Hacker. And Richard, and maybe Nick can answer, but the policy as I read it, the actual policy, 916.1, which is linked to the agenda, It says, you know, I understand everything you're saying, but it says, you're saying in state law or somewhere else or some other policy it allows for the storage lockers on campuses? Because it bans those storage lockers with paragraph 2. Is there some other place that we cite that it's allowed in those storage lockers at, say, campus police departments?
Member Hacker, this is Nick Vaughn. The lead into number 2 says except as provided by law, and so what Richard was just referring to is, I can't remember the section, I think it's 62.102.13 allows for the storage of firearms in a locked vehicle. So as that is written, and plus, I think 2 is only dealing with campus-owned or operated buildings, so it doesn't even get into parking lots or not buildings. But we had it initially as listing the specific sections of law that allow for, you know, whether it's what we're dealing with now out of House Bill 1279 that allows for storage in a residence and storage in a locked vehicle, but then we just figured it would be better to say it except as provided by law in case more changes were made. So I think we're covered there, but if you want that specified, we can add that.
Mr. Chair and Nick, I understand the parking lot discussion because this specifically states buildings, but the campus PD building is under the control of the State Board of Higher Education. This policy bans it from all buildings with other exceptions, but the other exceptions don't include the PD buildings. So I'm wondering, is there an explicit place in law that says you can store the firearm at campus PD if they have a locker set up?
Member Hacker, my understanding is that it's not just for security on campus, it's for recognized police departments that are recognized under the law, under statute. So yes, but I would defer again to, you know, I know NDSU, UND, Wapaton all have police departments. I would defer to them of how, it might be in the regs actually where that's allowed, but we can clarify that coming back for second reading or have a better answer.
Yeah, my sense is, Nick, is we could just review statute to ensure they have that ability to continue to do that. I know several of them do.
Yep.
Chair Martin.
Yes, please, go ahead.
This is Mike Ness. We had talked about this as Academic and Student Affairs Council, and a couple questions I had. One, considering a form that would be uniform for the presidents to fill out when they do give this to the chancellor. Is that something we want to consider as part of this? And the other part, when we talk about dangerous weapons, and it is Century Code, should we have a citing there, the connection to some type of Century Code site so people do understand that this is Century Code and they can go to that site?
Richard, can you answer that?
Yes.
Or Nick?
Chair Morton, Member Ness, certainly we can add a reference to links people to where the definition of dangerous weapons exists in Century Code. I think that will be useful and also interesting. If someone's interested in the topic, it's quite the list. As far as the, can a form be required of the presidents that is then shared with the chancellor, this certainly could be done. I don't know whether it's necessary or not. I'll leave that to the discretion of the board. Because of the way state law is written and policy is written, this is going to come up incredibly infrequently. The only examples we see of it being invoked are presidential residences that are owned by the state board. And there are, I don't remember how many there are, but there's less than 10. And then the ag experiment stations, which is specifically referenced in the policy as an unusual situation where there are, in the wilds of North Dakota, occasionally a building the board owns where someone lives related to the ag experiment station. Otherwise, there are few, if any, instances when this policy will be invoked. So I will leave it to the discretion of the board whether they think there needs to be a specific form or if a conversation between a president and the chancellor is sufficient.
Don?
Thank you, Richard. President Bashani?
Thank you, Chair Morton. I've heard several expressions of wanting a paper trail, if you will, on the exceptions granted by presidents or the exceptions granted by the chancellor. The caution I would throw in is, as Richard was just describing, this is going to be a very rare circumstance in the first place. But creating a paper trail also creates a public record that can be discoverable and advertised. And in fact, you may be creating a risk situation by identifying who has firearms and where they're at in something that could be published on the front page of the paper. And I have to wonder what the necessity is of a paper trail versus just a conversation. The conversation can be witnessed so that that doesn't somehow become forgotten without the liabilities of identifying where firearms and dangerous weapons are located.
Thank you. Any comments, further questions?
Chair Morton, this is UND.
Please go ahead.
This is Nesset. I want to follow up on Dr. Bashani's comment, and I will agree with that. I think that records and more detailed records. I personally would like to see this kept according to the policy that we have now, without burdening this with a paper trail that is then being able to be discovered and possibly shared.
Thank you, Kathy. I agree. Anybody else?
This is Kevin Milliker. I would agree with those same comments that Ms. Nesset and Dr. Bashani mentioned, as well as yourself, Mr. Morton.
Do we need a vote to approve the first reading, or Richard?
Mr. Morton.
Don, this is Casey. Just one quick clarification. I was the one who brought up that issue on the chancellor knowing. I have no problem if it's a verbal statement to the chancellor. I just think he needs to be aware of it in case something adverse happens and he has to say, well, I didn't know about that. So verbal is fine.
Thank you, Casey.
This is Birgit. I would recommend verbal with a witness, just in case, let's say the chancellor isn't anymore there in 5 years from now, and the weapon happens to be there, and then there isn't any kind of record of it anymore. I think if there is at least one other person in the room, so that it's definitely that there is some kind of a memory for it.
Further discussion? Richard, do we need a vote on this?
Chair Morton, this is Nick Vaughn. Yes, we need a vote on this. It will come back to the board for second reading if it is approved, or first reading that is. And I think we've gotten some detail or information requests that we can follow up with the board in February, as well as presenting the language that Dr. Ryan suggested in the Budget Finance Committee.
Thank you, Nick. Is there a motion to approve the first reading?
This is Jacob.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Ms. Nesset?
Yes.
Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Dr. Milliker?
Yes.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Board Chair Morton?
Yes. Thank you. We will move to the next item, the Academic and Student Affairs Committee. And Mike, you want to lead us through this?
Thank you, Chair Morton. We met last week and went over the consent items that are on the agenda here, and I think it'd be best if I turn this over to Richard to go over those quickly.
Thank you, Chair Morton. Member Ness, I don't know that it's necessary to go through each item individually. I'll try to highlight them by clusters, the type of actions they are. We have 2 new bachelor's programs being rolled out that are related to cybersecurity and information technology. BSC has requested board approval for a Bachelor's of Applied Science in Cybersecurity and Information Technology. This is a degree program that is targeted to professionals who are already in the field and wish to extend their existing 2-year degree into a 4-year degree and increase their qualifications. And DSU has actually item 10 and item 13. DSU has requested permission for a BS in Information Analytics. UND has requested permission for a BS and MS in Data Science. These aren't exactly the same thing, but they're both within the spectrum of what us non-specialists would consider cyber and information technology. Both are degrees that are intended to serve a population that is not computer engineers, but rather people who are going into positions where they have to work every day with data and understand what they are doing. And of course, the demand for this has been loud and clear over the past few years. We also have requests from Minot State for an early childhood education, NDSU for a master's in communications. These are straightforward degrees. Then there is a very long list from UND for certificates. We're claiming that UND has broken the record for the number of programs requested at one time. We didn't actually do any research to see if that's true, but I stand by my claim. UND has requested a variety of undergraduate certificates and graduate certificates in areas. This represents a shift in credentialing in higher ed, which we've been talking about, which the Lumina grant is in part about. In old school higher ed, you have, if you're going for an undergraduate degree, you have a major, you have a minor. If you're an overachiever, you might have a second major. Certificates are a way within existing degree programs for an individual to gain recognition for a specific set of knowledge or skills they've acquired, which will be of interest to future employers or useful in their career. These might be things that didn't rise to the level of a minor or a major, but are substantial clusters of knowledge. So, for example, the UND undergraduate certificate in Chinese. Chinese is a difficult language. We don't have a lot of students who complete a major in Chinese. We do have students, however, who take enough Chinese courses to develop some basic competencies. We wish we had more. This is a way for them to get credit for the Chinese coursework they complete without having to complete a full minor or a major if that doesn't fit in with their other degree plans. Similarly, for the graduate certificates, the graduate certificate, for example, in cybersecurity and behavior can live within another degree program, but says this individual has specific skill sets that may be of interest to an employer. UND also has requested 2 minors has rolled out their cybersecurity plan and program with the minor BS and MS in cybersecurity. We discussed at Academic Affairs Council how many programs does the state need in cybersecurity. I believe the consensus of the council was, for the time being, demand for cybersecurity is going to be high. We also don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but we think what's going to happen is cybersecurity is going to be such a part of so many degree programs that every campus, every institution is going to need to be able to offer some cybersecurity courses. So whether all these degree programs will be around 10 years from now remains to be seen, but there's no doubt that the people teaching cybersecurity will be needed at these institutions. So there wasn't any concern that, or any unmitigatable concern that we were over-expanding in this area. It looks very much like natural evolution, as we've seen in other areas of technology, where it shakes out as the field develops. And then UND's minor in unmanned aircraft systems is also ready to go. That is obvious and needs no comment. So that's a large list of new programs. These do need full board approval, and then they will become active.
Chair Martin.
Thank you, Richard.
Chair Martin.
Questions? Please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Mike Ness. I did have a couple of questions during our meeting on the certificates. We all thought the certificate direction UND is moving is extremely important for our students in North Dakota and across the nation, probably. My questions were, what does a certificate take for credits? How many credits does it actually take? And do you have to add that on to a BS or a master's, or can a two-year student take a certificate?
Member Ness, I'm still researching that question. I will have to come back with the answer to that.
I think that's a good point, Mike. Thank you. I also think the certificate program are really, that's the direction. And to me, it gives faculty a chance to really get creative. I just go back to NDSU's sales certificate. One faculty person, Dr. Mike Crush, started this certificate program years ago. And it's just wildly successful and it's very timely. And but it took a faculty person, really focused on it, and it allowed them some creativity, and it's really grown into something very, very good. And the thing about the certificate programs, it's something attractive for the person in the workforce who needs to upgrade their skills a little bit. So I think all the schools are really looking hard at the certificate programs and I think this is the right direction and very, very positive for our system. Any other comments?
This is Kevin Melliker, and I agree with that. And we want to make sure, though, that with the work with our Lumina Attainment Grant, that all of these fall within the guidelines of making sure that they work towards our attainment, because that is one of the goals of establishing these certificate programs. And secondly, we want to make sure that people can hopefully apply for a certificate program only. And as Chair Morton just stated, if we can utilize these certificate programs to get people to attend, or either online or on campus, these programs, they're very beneficial, and I'm very much in favor of it. I'm also very much in favor of what Bismarck State College is putting together with their BAS in cybersecurity and information technology. And I know they've been working very hard on this and hopefully going to get some additional funding in the future. But that's the way I think about the certificate programs, because we really want to increase that attainment, and this is certainly a solid way of doing it, as well as introducing people to our various campuses.
Thank you, Kevin. Anybody else?
Chair Morton?
Kathy?
I'd like to just add, one more perspective. How about from the business community and from the companies hiring? you hire somebody in one curriculum with a degree, bachelor's or master's degree, but if they have a certificate in something a little bit different, to me, that's value added. That's somebody, oh, by the way, they also have, unmanned systems knowledge. They have, a certificate in some other direction. To me, that is a qualifier for further job placement. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Definitely a resume enhancer for a college student. Jacob's taking notes over here. Anybody else? Yes.
Chair, could I just make a comment?
Please do.
Yeah, I just want to applaud several of the campuses that are very forward-leaning in these areas of emerging technology. For those who saw the governor's speech, he only had one technology he pulled out and said this is a massive challenge, and it was on the cybersecurity. Tomorrow, there will be the governor convening a P20 in cyber curriculum. We'll have our people there. And back to Member Nessett's point, the biggest cyber company, IT company, convened a meeting in Minneapolis. It was after our last board meeting. I want to thank Dr. Melliker for going. And we were the first state they've selected for this. It's because we're workforce responsive at the 2-year programming and the BAS, bringing together company technologies, curriculum, and they wanted a statewide approach, which through the foundation that Kevin board and the board system approach was very appealing. And that will be the follow-up meeting that Greg Steeman will go out to California. So, we've had a lot of people saying, is the state board doing enough on workforce? We have the study, which we're very much enjoying doing. But boy, the campuses are really responding without too much prodding on some very urgent areas, from certificates to these new fields. So I wanted just to make that note to thank people.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Kevin Melliker, I just want to add a comment about Train ND. It was talked about quite a bit at the Lumina Attainment Grant meeting, and they offer many certificates as well. And currently, from what I understand, it is being paid by the employers. And so we have been looking at that and seeing if that is a way we can blend more undergraduate certificates or develop more undergraduate certificate programs available to students, and not necessarily strictly through the employers. But that is one of the issues that came up that we talked about.
Out of curiosity, what is cyber psychology?
I'm sorry, you were asking about what specific one?
Cyber psychology, what is that?
It deals with the psychological issues, specifically dealing with cyber. I don't know that I have the curriculum specific to me, but I can get you the curriculum for you if you would like.
It was just a curiosity question, but thank you, yeah.
I was challenging our faculty yesterday. For example, Emory Riddle has a human factors psychology major. We do a lot of human factors. We don't have one. They don't have a psychology department. Why shouldn't we be doing that? So I think the idea of combining areas of expertise into something in a certificate is a great idea for both the employer as well as the students. So I'll get you the further detail on that curriculum.
Thank you.
And if I could just jump in, Dr. Preuss, I'm on the governor's addiction prevention initiative, big conference coming up in April, and actually addictive behaviors online were one of the things we were having a sidebar on. It's becoming a huge challenge in lots of areas and a rapidly developing field for business applications, counseling services, et cetera. So again, the impact on student learning and addictive behaviors is very much a concern with regard to cyber. So maybe the title's a little weird, but it's certainly something we need in the state to have some people with that background.
Thank you. It was more interesting than I thought.
Anybody else? Richard, can we bunch these all together then?
Chair Morton,
One motion?
yes, you could approval of the new programs, items 9 through 30 as one motion.
Chair Martin?
Yes.
This is Mike Ness. I still would like to have Richard do some follow-up on some of the questions that we have. I don't think it's going to make any difference on our vote here. One of the other things that we did talk about, and it could be linked right into this, is the distance education. You see, many of these are on-campus and distance education. And we had also talked about their engineering program at UND that's going to be going distance education, and we had talked about possibly having someone from UND discuss this at our next meeting. Real change in direction and very important. So saying that, I would make a motion to approve these items 9 through 30.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Mike, I would just, when we get to the end of the meeting, when we're talking about agenda items for February, why don't you bring this up again as an agenda item for our February meeting?
I will do that.
Thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Dr. Melliker?
Yes.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Ms. Nesset?
Yes.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Board Chair Morton?
Yes. Program terminations. Richard?
Chair Morton, members of the board, we have 7 program terminations. All of these are low enrollment or no enrollment programs, and they are program consolidation moves. I think I can summarize them all by saying students will still be able to study these areas for the most part if they desire. The issue is these particular credentials are no longer desirable. The exception to that might be therapeutic writing at NDSU, which simply has been a low enrollment program and something that's difficult to offer via distance ed to meet the demand. But for example, NDSU is doing away with their Masters of Science in Botany. This does not mean you can't study botany at NDSU anymore. It just means that the trend in that particular field has been that you would get a Master of Science in biology with a focal area in botany. So these are all adjustments to deal with low enrollment in these particular credentials, but don't represent areas where suddenly we'll be lacking in this in the state. I would suggest these also could be due as a all-in-one motion, and I can answer questions if there are any.
Yes, are there, I think these terminations, this is always good to see what we need to quit doing. And this, I think this is very, very good. Any questions around terminations?
This is Kevin Melliker, and I just don't know and Dr. Brashani will have to answer this. I don't know the relationship between the horse park in Fargo and NDSU, and how will any of these programs affect that relationship, good, bad, or indifferent?
I know these changes would have any impact on that relationship. The horse park uses the equine center on the weekends that they have races, but there are no implications or connection between, other than that, there's no connection with the horse park and no conflict created by this.
Okay, thanks.
So you're not concerned about losing a lot of tuition dollars for therapeutic riding?
I want to still be able to go out there and ride my horse when I want to.
Any other questions or comments?
Chair Morton, this
is
Andy.
Is there a motion? Okay, go ahead, Andy.
Just a quick question or comment, I guess maybe for Dr. Brashani and or Richard or whatever. We've vetted this through the programs or departments and are looking at students' best interest in teaching them out as well, because when we cancel or close out programs, I think that's not a good thing necessarily, but we want to make sure that students are being treated fairly and equitably, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And again, I want to stress, that doesn't mean the courses aren't available. It means the program with that title on it is no longer available. But typically the programs effortlessly transfer into another academic degree title and program. So the students aren't losing access to anything. We're just getting rid of some archaic organizational structure.
Very good. Thank you for the clarification.
Any further comments? And has a motion been made? Can we have a motion to for items 31 through 37?
Kevin Milliker, so moved.
Second, is there a second? Been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Dr. Milliker?
Yes.
Ms. Nesset?
Yes.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Board Chair Morton?
Yes. The next item is Budget and Finance Committee, and Nick, you want to lead us through this?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you don't mind, we'll take 38, 39, and 40 together.
Please do.
Okay, starting with item number 38, this is a transfer of $152,000 for the North Dakota State College of Science. Transfer from the operations line to the capital assets line, and this is to catch the match of the state funding. Senate Bill 2003 required a 2-to-1 match for extraordinary repairs, and that'll allow them to complete some repair projects to boilers, concrete repair, et cetera, around campus. The item number 40 is NDSU is requesting approval.
39.
Oh, I got them backwards. Apologize. 39 is NDSU's request to proceed with an elevator replacement at Stockbridge Hall. Currently, they have a freight elevator, and they would like to convert that to an actual passenger hauling elevator to create better use of the facility. This is at an estimated cost of $350,000, and the use would be auxiliary local funds. And Bismarck State College is requesting a transfer of $124,374 at BSC, and this is to repair or to move actually the admissions entrance from the back of Schaefer Hall to the front of the Jack Science Center, so it create much more accessibility into the admissions area. Again, that will catch the Senate Bill 2003 2-to-1 match, and so they're asking for that transfer. So with those three projects, we would request your approval. The committee did unanimously approve them.
Any, any questions of Nick right now? Questions or comments of Nick? Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Ms. Nesset?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Dr. Milliker?
Yes.
Board Chair Morton?
Yes. Nick, is there an item 41? I'm showing a blank on my page.
Mr. Chair, item 41 is the room, board, and fee guidelines for 2018-19. The board generally takes these up about this time of year so that the campuses can begin to plan for their and develop their budgets for the foregoing year.
Very good. Want to give us...
What does it say?
Just on a high level, there was one modification from the last year that we did this, and I'm going to let Tammy discuss that. But in general, all of the other guidelines follow what has previously been done or which is defined in statute, which includes student fees. Student fees are capped at 1% of the cost per year, and so none of those changes have really been introduced, but there has been a change as it relates to the room and board, and so I'll let Tammy introduce that.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, as Nick explained, it is that time of year where we start thinking about rates and fees for the upcoming year and establishing budgets for the upcoming year. The board's responsibility as it relates to room, boards, and fees is to establish the guidelines that the president and their staff work and use to establish those rates. The one change that Member Hacker was referring to is as we all know, the 2017 Legislative Assembly did not provide additional funding for general salary or equity increases for the 17-19 biennium. So for the first year of this biennium, which we are in right now, the board had prohibited those type of salary increases being given out. And that was related to auxiliary services areas such as the room and board rates that we're talking about here, and just across the board general and salary equity increases. For this coming fiscal year, for fiscal year 19, we are recommending, and the committee discussed and approved, allowing the campuses some flexibility as it relates to general salary and equity increases. So for fiscal year 19, we would allow the entities to provide reasonable general salary or equity increases with chancellor notification. So they would just need to stay in touch with our office and let us know what they're doing with those. The one caveat that we wanted to make sure and list is that the current and ongoing costs of those general and salary equity increases, if they are funded with state general fund or tuition dollars, must be supported by documented budget reallocation or budget cuts. That statement probably isn't as applicable to these guidelines as it will be to the annual budget guidelines that you will see in the next 2 months, because these rates are not typically general fund or tuition dollars, but we wanted to make it clear up front that we need that support for any increases funded with those types of dollars. And other than that, as Chair Hacker explained, you have your typical things that are built into rates. That's what's included in your cost of operations, cost of food, technological advancement, set aside for repair and replacement, and all those types of factors must also be built into the room and board rates, and that is, as it has been in prior years, it's unchanged. Other than that, we will be, if you approve these guidelines, the campuses will start working on that, and over the next 2 months, they'll be working on that, working through budget finance, and we're hoping in March to bring the annual budget guidelines to you, which would include these changes as well as tuition rates. So are there any questions?
Thank you, Tammy. Any questions of Tammy or Nick?
Mr. Chair, I would just add that this is, we're working diligently to give campuses as much flexibility as we can with a framework that makes sense based on dollars appropriated by the legislature, so that we give them some flexibility. As an employer in this state, and I think there's many others, we understand the challenge of retention when we're not providing any sort of pay increase or incentives. So this framework allows for fine cost savings, and you can right size some of those folks to increase your retention. And so with that, the committee did approve of this, of the room and board guidelines for 2018-19.
Thank you. Good comments. Anybody else? Comment or question? Can we have a motion?
Chair Morton, this is Casey. The one thing that did come up at the meeting was how this needs to be reported, and I think it's in the minutes from the Budget and Finance Committee, but basically this should be left to the presidents with the chancellor being aware of what's been done, but the chancellor does not need to have final say over the matter.
Good. Campus decisions should be made at the campus.
Chair, this is Greg. I'll move approval.
We have a motion to, is there a second?
Kevin, second.
I think Casey beat you to the punch, Kevin.
That
Thank
sounds
you.
good.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Ms. Nesset?
Yes.
Dr. Melliker?
Yes.
Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Board Chair Morton?
Yes. And our final committee report will be our governor's report from Kathy Nesset. Kathy?
Chair Morton, thank you very much. I would like to give the report from our governance committee meeting that was held on December 14th, 2017. Item number one we went over was board development. Laura Schrapp did a great presentation and she brought us up to date on work with the board and within the board. Next, we were reviewing processes and policies, policies and procedures for the board. Nick Vaughn assisted us with this. Once again, we did go over several of the policies that are board policy, some of them including policy starting right with beliefs and core values of the board. Several different policies were reviewed. The governor's task force on governance. The chancellor gave a thorough report on that. He's a member of the committee. I did assist with that. One thing that the governance committee wanted to stress and review is that there's several different directions that committees and work of the board and others, from the 2-year task force to the governor's committee to our governance committee that has been in place for over a year. All of these are working to the same goal, Envision 2030. We're all working, and these all work kind of in concert with one another. And the task force, or our committee, did review that. Presidential evaluations were reviewed. Board involvement, the chancellor went over this with us. We're continuing to go through evaluation process, and we'll have recommendations, for both the 2-year, 4-year campuses at the next meeting. Our committee reviewed faculty relations. We find the relations with the faculty very important, and the governance committee reviewed that and discussed it. And with that, we will just bring more information. We'll have another meeting here prior to the February meeting, and we will follow up on some of these topics. That concludes my report.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we need a motion on anything, so we will keep moving. I think we're doing pretty well time-wise. I would propose that we take a break until 10:25 to freshen our coffee or do a little mingling, but let's resume again at 10:25. We'll continue with the other reports and finish up.
Almost done.
You guys need more coffee?
I'm fine.
Short, sweet, and painless.
Pardon?
That was short, sweet, and painless.
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great. Thank you.
Perfect. Then I'll get into it. As I was introduced, I'm Caleb DeShock from the North Dakota Student Association. We met on the 19th in Bismarck. We were joined by Lisa Johnson, Jerry Rodstead, and Darren King, and they joined us in committee and provided some very valuable insights into tech services and student affairs. We were also joined by Robbie Loff, and he gave us some great input on legislative affairs. At the meeting, we passed a structure change to make our organization more efficient and prepare stronger transitions. In addition, our new website will be launched soon, so when that goes live, we will be emailing stakeholders across the state to let them know that we have a new website which will have our meeting dates and information and things of that nature. Continuing our work with open educational resources is probably our highest priority, and the state auditor's office just released a new survey today to student leadership across the state. So we're very excited to see what comes from this audit, and we'll be participating in that. Next month in February, we'll be in Wahpeton on the 23rd for our meeting. We'll be holding a discussion on Envision 2030 and looking to contribute to the overall discussion on the student of tomorrow. We'll be inviting guests from the NDUS, members of the state board, so look forward to that, the governor's office, and members of the Higher Education Interim Committee to participate and help us bring perspective to that conversation. We hope that this discussion will guide the Student Association for the next few years and provide state decision makers a valuable insight into what students believe our future will look like. And as always, this North Dakota Student Association is more than willing to provide student perspective to any policymaker in North Dakota. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. In addition, I'm happy to answer any questions you have currently.
Excellent. What was that date again for your Wahpeton meeting?
February 23rd and then the 24th. So we start at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd in February.
Okay. Did Robbie Loff share any of his war stories from his student leader days?
And personally, yes, he sat down and told us a few interesting excerpts from his time as a North Dakota Student Association member. It's always good to have that perspective.
I was around at the time, so I can validate some of it. Thank you. Any questions of Caleb?
A lot of dates. Oh.
Any questions of Caleb or comments?
Don,
Thank you,
Mr.
Caleb.
Chancellor, I just want to thank Caleb for convening his group, because that's been one of our challenges, is getting student feedback because of just such turnover. You know, students moving to their senior year, and then they begin to think about post-college plans, and he's been very focused on giving us feedback, and we want to thank him for that, because that is one of the challenges. I'm always amused, you know, that people in their elderly years can vote to cut education, but anybody under the age of 18 can't even vote. You know, we have a dilemma there, and so we have to really think about
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing none. Thank you, Caleb. You can go back to your studies, your class, or back to your nap.
Yep, it's back to marketing for me, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we, Dr. Dreikseth, are you on?
Okay.
There you go.
Yes, I'm here in Dickinson. I have a short report from the Council of College Faculties. We did have 2 meetings since your last meeting. We met on December 5th and January 9th. There's 3 things, I guess, that I'd like to mention. We have as well set up our faculty summit, and that is going to be April 13th. That's a Friday. We're going to do that at the Capitol, and we're working with the staff, so it's going to be a combined situation. So we're working with Rita on that. We're going to go from 11 to 2, talking about and working our opinions into the Envision 2030 pillars. And then our final hour is going to be kind of open. We're going to really work on what those other topics are going to be. Chris Erickson, your public affairs person at the North Dakota University System, has been kind enough to agree to help mediate that the first couple hours of the meeting. So we really appreciate that, because he's very much the expert. on the pillars and on Envision 2030. We're also have been sharing our concerns with Darren King with Blackboard. Statewide has had challenges and some very difficult situations for faculty, so Darren's been very responsive to that. And along with that, we're watching the issues and what might come up with net neutrality with our online classes. Finally, we would ask, and we can get a little bit more detail on this, but we're concerned with the interesting differences in tuition waivers for faculty who take classes at other schools in the system, in particular faculty who might want to work on their PhD. So we would like to, and I know that Birgit knows a little bit more about that, but we'd like to put that on your next agenda or perhaps the month after that if possible. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, Don, this is the Chancellor. I just want to thank Dr. Dragnes for putting this summit together. Again, it's been something that we've been trying to get on the schedule, since last year, and she's actually been able to push that over the line to get a date and time. So I know that's not easy bringing people together. And our system office, we have some money from Vision, and we'll help defray some of that expense where we can. So thank you again for getting that, on the schedule for us.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Dr. Drexeth. Retha, are you on?
Chair Morton, this is Andy. Retha is not able to be with us today. If I could take just a minute or two, and then there'll be a short update from our staff Senate Vice President Cole Kruger in Minot. So if I could take just a minute or two, if that'd be okay.
Please do. Please proceed.
I sent out the updates yesterday, this monthly updates, and I hope that those are informational for you. The campuses compile those on a monthly basis. The State Staff Senate did not meet in January. Our meeting would have been during the first week of school, so we decided to postpone that meeting. We did meet last in December, and I'd like to thank Board Chair Don Morton for coming to that meeting and providing an update to the State Staff Senate. It was quite a lengthy meeting, and Mr. Morton brought forth lots of information to the staff, and it was much appreciated. So thank you very much for coming to that. Just two quick highlights in the updates. Actually, they were not in the updates that were provided to you, but I just would like to take a minute or so to recognize a couple of employees that are leaving the University of North Dakota real quickly. A couple of longtime staff members are retiring at the end of this month, and they were instrumental, I guess, in my time at UND. So I'd like to take just a minute to recognize Barry Brody and Dale Rickey. They're both members of the Television Center. Barry is the director of television and radio at UND, and he's retiring at the end of the month. They had a little party for him yesterday, a little retirement party, and Barry was instrumental in lots of student lives throughout his 37 years at the University of North Dakota. He was very much a leader to lots of students and staff and faculty members at the university, so he'll be missed greatly. So thanks very much. Barry also had a word of the day that he used to engage students in the part of the Studio One television department TV show that was that aired for a number of years. There were more than 500 episodes over a time span that started in 1987. That television show was an informational, kind of like a Good Morning America Today show type of thing. It was important in my time at UND. So he started that show. He and some others started that show a long time ago. So he'll be missed at the university, but thank him for his service, as well as one of his right-hand men, so to speak, his engineer, Dale Rickey. He was behind the scenes fixing and maintaining and keeping the technology up to speed. So Dale had served at the university for 38 years, if I'm not mistaken. So I want to thank both of them for their service to the University of North Dakota. That's my quick update. And now at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the State Staff Senate Vice President Cole Kruger. He has a couple of quick updates on what the State Staff Senate has been doing over the past couple of months. So take it away, Cole.
All right, thank you so much, Andy, and thank you to everyone on this call for the opportunity to just share this update. I really want to also piggyback off Andy and thank Chairman Don Morton because he came to our last meeting and was really well received to really have that presence there and to hear all of our state staff senate concerns and address them right there. And I think that was very impressive, well received, and it felt very genuine. So I think that was very big in terms of it made our group feel very heard, and I think we can build off that. The reason I wanted to speak briefly is because our state staff senate has identified that, as everyone's aware, because of budget cuts and other reasons, there's just been some fatigue going on with staff members all across the state. And as the state staff senate, we've been trying to identify some of the most low-hanging fruit in terms of ways that we can improve for our current staff members, just some of the conditions. And there's already some great things out there, like the tuition waiver policy. And so we've looked at some other ways that we can hopefully, without trying to have just a huge number in mind or a huge budget aside, to help improve the current conditions for staff members as they face, larger workloads, probably extended hours, just different conditions like that. And as a group, we're looking forward to bringing those recommendations. As a unified state staff senate, we're going to have each staff senate across the state vote on these a couple different measures. And then as a unified state staff senate, we plan on presenting those at the summit this summer. So just wanted to give you guys that update, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Cole. Any questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to the next item, assessment of the meeting and future agenda items. I'm sorry, we got to do public comment. Public comment, I'm sorry. We will proceed to public comment. Anybody from the general public would like to speak? I don't think we have any public comment today, so we will move on to the assessment of the meeting and future agenda items. I would just say, I think today's a great example. It would have been a shame to have everybody drive somewhere today. We're going to be done by 11 o'clock. It would have been 4 minutes earlier if I hadn't screwed up my time on the break. But I think there are some things that can be handled very well via Ivan, and it's a huge productivity gain for the campuses and for the board members, especially those board members that also have a full-time job. So I really appreciate the digital meeting. Future agenda items.
Chair Morton, this is Casey and other board members. One of the things, and it kind of ties into what you just said, is I'm trying to get a grip around how much time should I allocate for an Ivan meeting, because I started out today, earlier in the week I was to 2 o'clock for today's meeting, and then there was patient issue came up, so we went to 1:30. But if there's a way that, and maybe if I'm inappropriate, I totally understand that, but if there's a way to kind of guesstimate how long the meeting will go, it would be beneficial. Understanding that I've been you've been at meetings where I'm the chair, and you say to someone, well, this is going to be a really quick meeting, and something comes up and it's not a quick meeting. But it would be nice to have a rough idea, so then I can maybe go an hour beyond whatever time you say. And for me, it's just a time issue. I understand when we're all together at a site that it's the whole day that we have to allocate to it. But if there's a way to do it, I would say do it. If you can't, I understand that.
Casey, I think that's a great point, and we certainly can try to do just that. I think our monthly meetings between the face-to-face meetings, I think this is all new for us, and we'll learn as we go along, but I think we'll save the real meaty, the real controversial issues for the face-to-face. And that means there will be the digital meetings will be shorter, but the good point, and we will strive to to help you to be more precise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Morton, this is Andy. I just want to echo your comments on the technology today. I think it does work really well. I'm sitting in my office today and connecting today's meeting. So, and I think others as well too. It does really cut down the time, and the technology is there to connect us all from various points in the state. So, holding these meetings does work really well. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Future agenda items. Do you have one, Greg?
Yeah, first I'd like to make a motion that the chair always refers to his cell phone other than his wristwatch. No, I'm just kidding. No, but policy 607.5, the faculty sick leave policy, was tabled at the May 17th meeting. But passage of the policy is needed to resolve a data inconsistency identified 2 legislative sessions ago. And in order to add the policy to the February agenda, I would make a motion that we remove 607.5 from the table and place it on next month's agenda. My understanding is that the system staff will brief us on the status of the policy draft prior to our board discussion next month. So with that, I would move that we would move 607.5 faculty sick leave policy from the table.
Thank you, Greg. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please. Go.
Ms. Nesset?
Yeah, this is Birgit. I'm wondering whether we could circulate the current policy to the faculty prior to the meeting.
Christy, did you hear that?
Chair Morton, Member Bruce, yes, that can happen. It will certainly be included in the agenda when it's sent out, but I think Carol Redmond can probably send that to you, the latest version, at least that the board had back in May 2017.
Thank you.
If any board members have any questions, I think Carol is with us. Hearing none, let's call the vote.
Ms. Nesset?
Yes.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Dr. Melliker?
Yes.
Board Chair Morton?
Yes. Could we just take a few minutes and if the presidents could just, if you have a highlight if there's something you'd like to share that's happening on your campus that you feel would be of value to the board, we encourage you to share it. If you don't have anything, that's fine too. But if you have something, we'd love to hear it.
Chair Martin?
Yes.
This is Mike Ness. One of the items I would like added to the agenda, February or whatever date works, would be ASAC had requested Dr. Rothfuss to have UND make some type of a presentation on their distance learning that they have implemented. It's not an item that needs to be voted on by the board, but I think it'd be very interesting for the board to find out about the distance education that they're doing, especially with their engineering program.
Good. Thank you, Mike.
This is Kevin Melliker. Sometime during the next 2 meetings, it would be appropriate to give an update on the University System Foundation. And I don't know if the next meeting if we will have some information for the board at that particular time. But if that does not work, then I would like to put it on the March agenda. And it would be just for informational use only.
Mark Kennedy, UND. Mark Kennedy, UND. Just as a quick update, we're making very good progress on the master campus plan that we're required to provide to you in February. We've got that in a very detailed state. We'll be having one more meeting with the public prior to bringing it to you, but we're making good progress on that, and that will result in some proposals for new buildings, but also overall a net reduction in square footage. So I'm hopeful that you will find that to be a good effort. The other thing is we look forward to being there in February to present on online. We're moving forward with perhaps elevating a couple of programs to be first up this fall with our new partnership, which is yet to be finally negotiated with Pearson. So we'll present that as well as a broader overview of what we're doing online, as well as our attitudes and views on the online form of delivery in higher education and how to maximize it for NDUS.
Thank you. We'll proceed with the presidents, and they might bring up something that we might want to add to the agenda. So we'll keep that agenda suggestion open till the end, okay?
I still had a suggestion for an addenda item, and that is the one that Dr. Drexis talked about, the tuition waivers. And it's an exaggeration that I'm well informed about it. I'm not, but it keeps coming back up that the people at Valley City State want to get a PhD and would like to get the full tuition waiver, not the 50%. And I'm wondering whether I could send you more information on that later and put it on one of the next agendas.
Yep. Send it to the system office, to Christy.
To Christy.
Okay. John, do you have anything to share with us?
Thank you, Chair Morton. Good morning, everyone. Just a quick update on the Career Workforce Academy. We have several groups in continuous working. Our program committee continues to work with the multiple K-12 districts and our academic staff to create those career awareness, career exploration, and career pathways for students, basically K through the associate degree. Our finance group has completed the first phase and has an operating budget for the proposed size and scope of a facility. We're waiting for, that group is waiting for the program committee to finish their work to understand the scope of the programs and how that would impact the operating budget as we want to make this thing sustainable as we look forward. Jim Garden from the Greater Fargo-Moorhead EDC, the director, is leading the site selection or site recommendation group to look at what is available within the Cass County region as possible sites, meaning both existing facilities to be renovated and or green sites. We hope to have those recommendations coming forward to the executive team sometime in March, and those would only be recommendations. The strategic plan has gotten, we've done our kickoff. We have a consultant that will work with the multiple K-12 districts to understand how they're going to link and create their seamless programming, and they'll be coming to our campus 2 or 3 times to work with our academic leadership and faculty to do the same thing with us so that we have that one curriculum basically from K through 14 for the academy. The fundraising efforts, we've had over 30 individual meetings with corporations, owners, private people. All 30 have been extremely well received. We ask for recommendations on how to make it better. We get none. Strong encouragement. As of today, we have $8 million pledged, and we believe that we are well on track, actually a little ahead in track in our fundraising goals. And I thought it was appropriate, as we said, when you gave us approval to enter into the fundraising, Chair Morton, that we provide you a quick update. My last is just a statement. I want to, in advance, thank Dr. Melliker. Dr. Melliker will be joining our team as we head to Chicago later in February as part of our accreditation process. We take a team out for a which is referred to as a strategy forum, and Dr. Melliker has done this in the past with our team and has agreed to do it again this coming February. So we want to thank you, Dr. Melliker, for donating your time and helping us to put forward our next strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Dean?
Thank you, Chair Morton. I have some IT solutions that I'm excited to share with the board, using IT to solve some of the biggest challenges that we face on campus. And there are 3 areas I want to highlight. The first is student safety and risk management. A couple of years ago, we started implementation of a number of software platforms that are cell phone based and allow students to log in. Particularly, the example I use would be at night when they're traveling from Old Main to the research park. The software indicates whether they're walking or driving, and it indicates if they've stopped unexpectedly. The police, if the student doesn't let us know that they purposefully stopped, the police can ping them. If they don't get a response while they're driving to the site, they can bring up the student's picture. They'll know who to look for in a crowd of students to see if they're okay or not. Adds a terrific level of security and safety for the students who are interested in taking advantage of the app. The second area has been regarding retention and graduation software, and it's some platforms that go well beyond PAR and Starfish that allow us to do, they're constantly updated. They come with support and advising from the firms that offer the software, and they also allow us to compare with similar institutions so that we can know not only what's happening with our student cohort, but how do they compare with other student cohorts. Down to the individual levels, by major, by college, we can aggregate it however we want, and it's been, we think, a very important piece in fairly steeply improving our retention and graduation rates in just a very short period of time. The third one that we're just now implementing has to do with academic advising and degree completion. There's nothing new with degree completion software. That's been around for years. Typically, it's mainframe based. This software, however, is mainframe and mobile based, so students are able at their convenience to check on their academic progress, get advice if they're falling off of that progress, and their advisor is able to mirror that as well. The software actually pings students to say, you're not taking the classes you need on time. If the student doesn't respond, the software will remind them again. If the student still doesn't respond, the software will notify the academic advisor, and the academic advisor can then notify the student. So it becomes almost a booby-proof way of making sure students stay on track toward timely degree completion, and we think it's going to be just one more tool in our IT toolbox to making sure that our students are very successful while they're at college and graduate in a timely manner.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. Artificial intelligence, big data, and big data are whole new fields that every industry can leverage. So thank you. Larry, are you ready to go from Bismarck State College?
Certainly. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Just a couple of quick things. First, to add to your conversation about certificates, I just thought I would let the board know that we have a lot of certificates, but one of them that really intrigues me is our GIS certificate. And we have, and it sort of speaks to, I think, the future of higher education, about people just keep coming back. We give out about 12 to 24 GIS certificates a year, and many of those, most of them, in fact, already have degrees, many bachelor degrees, most of them master's degrees, and we've even had a couple PhDs come back. So it sort of speaks to what I think is going to happen in higher education as people keep coming back to higher education to get those job skills and those certifications. So that just adds to the conversation that you were having about certificates. Also, my apology to the board, why Retha is not here today is because we've got her tied up down at the event center. We are hosting the 39th annual Energy Generation Conference at the Bismarck Event Center. We do that. We are the coordinators. We work with a committee of 25 folks that are in the energy fields, and we take over the event center. We have over 2,500 registrants this year, all in a variety of jobs throughout the energy industry. And this year we had 319 vendors buy booths at this convention. When I walk around the floor and I talk to the vendors that are there, they come from all over the United States, and they say this is the best energy generation conference that is held in the nation. So we're very proud of that. So that's where Retha's at today. She's busy down there because we have a segment in which we have one entire area that's set up for high school students, and they can come in and they can interact with the various vendors and the equipment and the kinds of jobs that are open to them. So Retha is overseeing that today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. Dr. Darling?
Thank you, Chair Morton. Just three quick things. First of all, we're pleased to let the board know that we've finished our electrical system replacement project that's been going on for about 17 months. The interesting thing about that is most of what's been replaced you can't see. it was all the stuff that was underground and in cabinets and those kinds of things. But two things that we're really thrilled with. One is we were also able to replace the heads on the lights on the streets and in the parking lots with LED lights, and it's much brighter, and we're using 1/3 the electricity we were using before. The other nice thing is we finally have a backup generator. In the 75 years of our campus existence, we've not had backup power. And as part of that project, we were able to install a backup generator to take care of some key systems, including heat, the kitchen, IT, phone systems, those kinds of things. So, and it's been tested and it's working as advertised. So we're thrilled with that. We also just wrapped up the window replacement project in our courtyard, and you saw the start of that when you were on campus for the meeting this fall. And the new windows and the light they let in are just beautiful. And we had one window that arrived broken and they had to remanufacture, and I just got an email that that's being replaced at 1 p.m. today, and then the project is complete. And the last, but probably the most important thing is we've just finished transforming our library into a learning commons, and our students at this point are thrilled with it. It did just a little bit of a makeover and changed from hard copy book resources to digital resources, added more computer stations for students, some individual and small group study rooms, a presentation room, and a digital media studio. And the students and faculty are just excited, and we've seen more traffic in there in the first month of the semester than I think we saw in the entire semester last year. And so when you get a chance to be on campus, we'd love to have you take a look at that. And I know that watching in the paper that the University of North Dakota and other libraries are doing the same thing. Bismarck State did it a few years ago, and they were very helpful when we were looking at what we were going to do. So I'll stop there with those three things, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Doug. A learning commons, that's a great term. Any questions? Williston, Dr. Miller?
Good morning, Chairman Morton, members of the board, Chancellor Heirat. A couple things really quick from our end. First off, we received notification on Monday from the Dakota Nursing Program that we have an additional site approved in Tioga for our nursing program, and we're looking forward to that expansion. The folks in Tioga are likewise thrilled about it. We have a couple more pieces to navigate with academic affairs and HLC, but we believe we'll be up and running in Tioga, offering that first year of nursing training next fall. Also, I want to give a big shout out to the rest of the Western presidents. We've been doing a considerable amount of work with Bach and you, trying to revision some of those things and make the program more expansive and also more meaningful. And my colleague at Dakota College, Bottineau, at Dickinson State, and at Bismarck State, they have all been very supportive. They've been great, insightful discussions with a lot of substance, and I know we're going to come up with a good product that's going to take Buck and you to the next level. Third and final thing for us, Chair Morton, is the Wilson State Foundation Board on our recommendation voted Monday to expand our scholarship program. We're actually going to expand it and offer the free tuition and fees piece to students who take a specific number of dual credits from us. And also we're going to add an academic achievement component that we haven't had before. And the academic achievement component will actually could possibly extend up into Canada. So I think we're expanding our reach a little bit. It's a good direction for us to go, and I continue to be very thankful that our board puts students first when it comes to how they allocate the dollars they raise and the dollars they have to leverage. So that's it from Wilson State, barring any questions from you all.
Thank you, John. Thank you for being a good neighbor to our Canadian friends to the north. Let's continue east, go to Dickinson. Tom?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Morton. I will be very quick in what we're doing. I want to thank UND for putting forward all of their certificate programs. I think it makes it easier for the rest of us when we begin to come forward. I know DSU has at least 4 or 5 programs we hope to bring forward by next fall, so those are right now in the works, and this is just a great way to give our students as good an education as possible. On campus, our Residence Hall, Woods Hall, continues to go through its renovation. We are still on track to open that under budget and in time for the fall 2018 incoming students. We're very excited about that. We are planning for our centennial. 2018 is Dickinson State University centennial. We have an all-campus reunion on June 28th through the 30th. That coincides with the Dickinson Carnival and the Rough Rider Rodeo. So for everybody listening today, I think you should mark that on your calendars, plan on being here. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on the most fun through the summer. Our early enrollment numbers for next fall are looking very strong. It's very early. I put that caveat, but we're happy about that. And we've been working very hard with our student athletes to ensure that they are scholar athletes. And last year, the overall GPA on our campus was 3.0. We're happy to say that our athletic GPA was also 3.0, and that the retention of our athletes has risen a tremendous amount. Part of, I think, our retention, I want to just mention our Heritage Foundation, which began anew 2 years ago with no money, no assets whatsoever. This year, for the second year in a row, they were able to give over $700,000 in scholarships to students, both athletes and non-athletes, to come to Dickinson State University. And those are scholarships that will follow the student all 4 years of his or her tenure at the institution. We're very excited about that. Overall, the Heritage Foundation has close to $10 million in assets that it's built up over the last 2 years. So I'm very proud of the work that they have done. And I just wanted to put that out there. And then finally, for a little bit of fun, we are going to have the DSU ice fishing tournament at Patterson Lake in the next few weeks. So along with the centennial celebrations, put on your ice crampons and come on out and go ice fishing with us when you can. So that is all I have, unless you have questions.
Thank you, Tom. Let's move to Minot State. Steve?
All right, very much. Good morning, Chair Morton. Thank you for the thanks for the opportunity. Just a couple of items. First off, just really coming off an exciting week here, having the governor here 2 days ago with the State of the State address, and just want to say a public word of thanks to the governor himself and the lieutenant governor and their team. He spent, obviously the main publicity was the address itself, but as he mentioned during that talk, he also began his campus tour that day by spending the entire day here at Minot State University. And so we had a really nice in-depth opportunity to show him the campus and have an opportunity to interact with our faculty and staff and students and some community leaders. And he was here all day, and he put in a very long day that day, and was nothing but gracious, and had a lot of good questions, and it was really a positive day for Minot State. And also want to just publicly thank our team here at MSU. As you mentioned, or someone mentioned earlier, there was an awful lot of logistics that day, and a lot of planning that went into hosting that event that day, and it really went off without a hitch. So that was an exciting day for Minot State University and the community of Minot for that matter. Next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, a number of you will be in Minot as well as we host the Interim Higher Education Legislative Committee. They will start Tuesday afternoon at 1 o'clock and be here Tuesday afternoon and then finish up on Wednesday morning. You should have just recently also received an invitation for a reception on Tuesday evening from 5 to 7. And that'll be a nice opportunity. We'll get to showcase our Northwest Arts Center, which we just opened, really just opened earlier this month, a new $1.4 million arts center that's been privately funded here in the lower level of our Gordon B. Olson Library. And it's a beautiful new space, and it'll work well for things like receptions, like we're going to do on Tuesday evening. So we'll look forward to showing that off, and it's going to be a great benefit for our students in the fine arts going forward as well. We're coming off here, just closing the calendar year. The Minot State Foundation set a record in calendar year 2017 on fundraising. That's coming off a record year in 2016, and I think a record from the year before that as well. So really a nice upward trajectory on the private fundraising going on. And of course, those are dollars that are directly supporting students through scholarships and through facilities upgrades and all sorts of things. So my hat's off to our MSU Foundation and the work that they do, and our donors and supporters. And of course, the Challenge Grant program has been a big part of the impetus for that, and continuing to add momentum to attract lots of those dollars. And then finally, I don't normally do this, but I do want to just acknowledge one individual student at Minot State for something really pretty significant here that he's doing. He's a student athlete, a young man from Bismarck, North Dakota, Bismarck Century graduate. His name is Tyler Rudolph. Tyler is a member of our men's basketball team. Earlier this year, he became our all-time leading rebounder, and if things go according to plan this weekend, he will become our all-time leading scorer. Not to put too much pressure on him, but he's 30 points away. And those are records that have stood for 40, 50, 60, 70 years, the folks that he's been passing. So really a tremendous young man, a North Dakotan. It's a great story. He's an accounting major. He's going to graduate this spring. He's part of the conference all-academic team. So he's a great success story here at Minot State and for our state. And so I just want to congratulate Tyler Rudolph for really some historic things he's doing here at the university this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Botno, Jerry, are you online?
Yes, I am. Good morning, Chair Morton, members of the board. Just a couple of things to share with you. I thought I'd start off with a student success story because I think we just had a recent opportunity to visit with one of our students, and I thought it was a good example of how our online programs can serve students. The student's name is Lindsay Granis. She's originally from Burlington, North Dakota, lives in Minot now. She graduated last spring with an Associate of Applied Science degree in photography. And she wasn't able to attend our on-campus program because she was working full-time, running her own cleaning business. But she's had a passion for art, drawing, and photography since she was a small child. She thought it was time to pursue her dream, and as she was checking programs, she came across our online photography program. And I think it's interesting because there are kind of a sense, how can you do photography online? But she pursued it. She was very successful. Interestingly, she was only on campus one time during her entire two-year program. She was looking for options after she graduated and came across an opportunity for an internship at Disney Corporate in Florida. She thought she'd apply. I think the interesting thing was, out of all the applicants from all across the country, from other photography programs, her manager told her she was the top candidate. And so she's at the beginning of January, just several weeks ago, she's now in Florida. We're hopefully looking forward to seeing perhaps some photography work on their website or from Disney Corporate that Lindsay has done as a North Dakota native. So we're really excited for her. I think it speaks to the success of the program and the opportunities that we can provide for place-bound students. And it also, I think, is attributable to the uniqueness of the photography program because it is truly a hybrid program in which we have both on-campus and online students kind of dually enrolled, interacting with each other. It's not a side-by-side program, but I think innovative from the standpoint in which we integrate both on-campus and online. So we think that's a great student success story, not just for us, but I think indicative of things that are happening across all of the campuses. One other thing that is unique for us, our foundation board is going to be meeting in about a month with a consultant to explore the first phases of a capital campaign. Again, this is exploratory, but it's very significant for us because this is something that has not been done in the history of the college, so we're looking forward to see how that progresses. So that's the news from Botno.
Good. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks for sharing Lindsay's story. Great. Let's go to Dr. Dahlberg at Valley City State. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Martin. I want to take this opportunity to thank the board for approving the search at Valley City. We're really looking forward to having a new president here on campus. And I also want to really thank Mr. Steeman for being willing to serve on that search committee. Thank you very much. We're looking forward to new things and new opportunities with a new person to lead us here. The other thing I'd like to mention is that I just want to follow up, I guess, on the MAT program, which was discussed about 2 years ago. Sometimes these things are approved and then you never know what happened. But I'd like you to know that our enrollment this semester has made the enrollment double since last year, and we'll have our first graduates in spring. So it's very clear that there was a need in North Dakota for the program, and we're very, very pleased that it's been as successful as it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dahlberg, and thank you for your willingness to serve as the interim president. Very much appreciated. And we'll go to Mayville with Gary.
Yeah, good morning. Gary isn't here, but Keith Stenjum. I have two brief updates on two of our newest programs. In December of 2017, we had our first graduate in our Master of Arts in Teaching degree, and we have approximately 20 students that are now accepted into that program. Our other program, our RN to BSN program for nursing, we have had that program for about 3 years. We've had 58 graduates, and we have around 75 students that are accepted into that program. Both of these programs are online programs. Thank you.
And congratulations on having a very neat office. Thank you very much, everybody. It takes a little bit of time, but not that much. But it's good for all of us on the board to hear the good things that are happening, to realize that their progress is being made. There's lots of positives, and so thank you very much for sharing with us. Did any of the comments stir any new agenda items?
Hey, Don, this is the Chancellor. Yep. Just one item, Steve touched on it, but if people missed it, the governor did reiterate education. It was one of his top 4 priorities, not just governance, but how to better support education. And he is going to visit every campus listening sessions. So we'll keep you posted in case he's near you and you want to be there when he arrives. So we'll keep you looped in once we know the schedule.
Thank you. Anything else before we close?
Chair Morton, this is Andy. I just had not a future agenda item, but just I felt the theme, and this is sort of call this a shameless plug, but the theme of distance education and online courses, that's what I do on my day-to-day duties. But there were several updates from the campuses, and I know UND is going to present some information next month, but I think there's a lot of exciting things happening in the world of distance education in the university system. So I'd like us to look at that in the future as well, what some of the other campuses are doing, because we're serving a lot of students in a lot of different places that can't traditionally come to the campuses. So just put that bug in your ear if you don't mind.
Thank you. Anybody else? I need a motion to adjourn, or can I just adjourn it?
Executive order.
Chair Morton, you can just
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Safe travels back to your homes.
Thank you.